the global food system is kind of at the nexus of three pretty significant forces. The first being that we have to continue to scale the system up to be able to produce affordable, nutritious food for a growing population. And at the same time, agriculture as an industry needs to be a provider of decarbonisation solutions to other parts of the economy. And the third is all of that has to happen at the same time.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AgTech Top Startup Series. I'm super excited to be here with Matthew Pryor. He's the general partner of Tenacious Ventures. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Hey, Carl. Yeah, good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, a quick background about why we're doing these interviews. We've done research. We looked at well over 5,000 startups within the ag tech and food tech landscape globally for reports on what we think are some of the best founders and startups across each industry. And then now we're hosting a series of interviews that bring the best of the best to the table to learn and get a little bit more deeper insights, both founders and venture investors. And one of the top ag tech investors that we came across was Tenacious Ventures. You guys actually have a really impressive portfolio, relatively a newer fund based out of Australia. Awesome portfolio company, really unique mission statement, and then also awesome team as well. So I wanted to jump in and learn a little bit more about who's Tenacious Ventures and also get some feedback on what your thoughts are about the ag tech landscape, your investment thesis, et cetera. Before we jump into questions, maybe I'll hand it off to you. Who is Tenacious Ventures? Maybe background of fund, why you started it, fund thesis, maybe assets under management.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for the opportunity. We are a sector-specific early stage agri-food focused fund. We just had our one fund, so you're right, decently young as far as a venturing firm is concerned. Fund one is 35 million Australian funds under management, and we are focused on pre-seed, seed, Series A investments with a significant geographic focus in Australia, but certainly not exclusive. So one thing you might know about Australia is it's always been considered sort of a dry continent. I think the way we probably view that now is that Australia really is kind of sitting on maybe 20, 30 years of research into adaptive agriculture. And that's really the core of the thesis for Tenacious. What we saw in Australia was a lot of innovation that was initially targeted at making Australia a more efficient producer of food and fiber. But in actual fact, there's this kind of wellspring of innovation of technology that is increasingly applicable on a global basis, as we all kind of struggle with the challenges of scaling up the food system in an increasingly variable climate.
Yeah, I wanted to dive quickly into your mission statement. You wrote on your website, you talk about you're focused on long-term, economically, environmentally, and socially sustainable future. I'm just curious, what does that mean to you? What does that mean as an approach as an investor?
Yeah.
What you're looking for?
Yeah. One other way we have of describing our sweet spot, if you like, is at the intersection of digitally native agriculture and climate solutions. And one of the things about being a sector specific investor is kind of knowing the environment. As investors, we talk about kind of founder market fit. In some ways, there's probably investor market fit as well. And so that understanding of the complex kind of interwoven fabric that is the food system, and to see change there to deliver real impact and financial returns, that kind of nuanced understanding of why our go-to-market needs to be, tailored in this specific way, both requires that depth of understanding. So we spend 100% of our time in agriculture. And also a lot of that work actually is writing down our own thinking about, how markets are evolving, why particular approaches have got traction, haven't got traction, why some of the kind of existing templates from other parts of the venture kind of world can't be applied directly without translation to agriculture. So that's kind of the broad reason for us being sector specific and having that kind of longer view, because our agriculture tends to move over a longer period. I mean, the unit of change really is a season, right? So if something needs to be demonstrated to work, it might be 3 or 5 years really before you can measure and demonstrate that what you're doing now is significantly better than what you were doing. So it's that, you know, a little bit more patience, a little bit kind of deeper understanding and that ability to kind of walk alongside the founders and have really understood the journey of a farmer as well to be able to provide that kind of high conviction, high support investing, which is what we want to specialize in.
And you already kind of touched on it, which is my next question about your investment thesis. And this is more of a question for the investor audience than anything. You are sector specific, focused
Yeah.
on agriculture and food tech. I'm just curious, why was that your approach setting up this fund? And is that going to evolve over time? And I'm also curious, just to add on top of that, is, are you seeing something in the agriculture industry that others don't? And is that really what's shaping your investment thesis? I know you touched on it a little bit, but I just want to dive a little bit deeper on that point.
Yeah, I think the why ag part in part came from some of my background and some of Sarah's background, my co-founder, which is that we had already kind of developed a passion for agriculture and really saw it as, one of the really big challenges that, as a global population that needed to be solved. And I think the second part of it, why sector specific, why not be a bit more of a generalist, is again, goes back to that experience. Before we were investors, we were supporters and advisors of innovation in agriculture. And it was really that conviction around the need for that high support, deeply connected, sort of convicted model to get things done in agriculture. And so, I would say we do have very specific ideas of what pathways we want to invest in. So, whether that's waste and resource recovery or, kind of democratized infrastructure, enhanced natural capital, embedded risk and finance, lower emissions production, these are all the kind of pathways that we're looking to invest in to create solutions. But you have to bring a larger group along. So some of the work we do also is at, other end of the barbell, if you like, working directly with larger organizations, with large food companies to help them understand, what we see, why we've made these investments, what they can do to increase their uptake and improve their understanding of maximizing the utility of those pathways that we want to help create.
And actually, that's a great segue into the next portion that I want to dive into, which is more on your portfolio. You have about 8 portfolio companies now?
Yeah, now 10, moving fairly quickly, but we just announced 2 fairly recently. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, maybe to start off, is there any portfolio companies you want to highlight or that you're currently excited about?
Well, I mean, I just walk backward from most recent. So most recently announced, which I think actually was yesterday, is a company called Cecil. We talked about the idea of enhancing natural capital as a sort of equal byproduct of scaling up a nutritious, affordable food. We have to make sure that the kind of ecological sustainability of those practices is also high. The kind of measurement and workflow and automation and digitization of that process at the moment is very underserviced. It's highly manual. It requires producers to sort of really commit to doing a whole lot of extra work, which is an unreasonable burden. And Cecil really are the kind of automation and workflow management platform for natural capital and for, tracking, monitoring, measuring the improvement of natural capital as part of agriculture production. Early team, obviously large and growing market, but something that we're super excited about. One step back before that, Jupiter Ionics, which is a company that basically can produce ammonia from air and water. It's sort of indistinguishable from magic in my lay understanding, but an amazing company, spin out from Monash University, who have developed a novel technology, nitrogen reduction reaction-based technology that can be powered from renewable sources. So a kind of batch, modular, scalable system for the direct production of ammonia. And obviously, it's a very topical area at the moment. The emissions intensity of the Haber-Bosch process is something that is considered to be, a large problem that needs to be solved. and Jupiter, have very promising innovation to provide, zero carbon solutions for the production of ammonia.
No, one of the things that I thought was really impressive about your fund is I think you hit all of the interesting and the most, exciting subcategories across agriculture and food tech. I mean, you have alternative meats, you have everything like waste management. We just
Yeah.
talked,
Yeah.
Regrowth was a company that we did interview with, carbon, analytics, and life cycle. You've done, you just talked about, innovations with what you can do within the soil. I think you also have pest management tools, your
Correct. Rapid aim,
products, like
Nori. Yeah.
done all the exciting stuff. And I think looking at your fund, I really kind of believe that you're aggressively looking at kind of the next frontier of ag tech and food industries. And, I'm just curious from your perspective, how are you able to gauge as an investor, when is the right timing to invest in these types of products? Because some of the things that we've seen across the board, whether it's for alternative meats, yes, plant-based foods tend to really take off and do
Yeah.
well. Alternative meats, cell-based production of lab-grown meat, it's really lagging. It's taken a quite extensive amount of time to complete.
Yep.
And at the same time, you see, you know, carbon marketplaces skyrocket, and analytics tools that go on top of measuring soil. But then you also see the biotech companies that are trying to alter what's happening in the soil. Some take off, some are kind of, the science takes a while to figure out before you can get to a viable product that's actually commercial and economically viable. So how are you able to gauge what is the right timing? Because I think you have a really ambitious view, both your mission, but your portfolio companies are, I mean, they're really very interesting.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate the feedback. I think the first answer would be actually go back to your question about sector specific. I mean, one of the things that's easily amongst the most enjoyable parts of what we do is that ability to spend 100% of our time in this space. And so we can take a really systems-based approach to our thinking. Another thing that we're really committed to is producing content that helps us and, our kind of global network, the community of what we call active operators, people who have this passion for really understanding, what a systems-based approach here is going to look like. And then on top of that, obviously it's kind of hypothesis formation about, this kind of technology pathway presents an opportunity for disruption or disintermediation or reintegration of kind of these existing ways. And so, a lot of it is taking kind of systems-based thinking from other areas and applying it directly to agriculture. We obviously rely a lot on that, as I said, that kind of broad network, our LP base, our kind of broader community. Every farmer who will spend time talking to us, we absolutely value all of that time. And I think the second also is a founder centricity. We are low volume, high conviction, high support investor. I've been through the founder journey, several times. And so I think we also really believe in that, the power of being able to kind of walk alongside the founders and provide that direct material support. I mean, agriculture is complex. We've written a fair bit kind of on this subject, and just the idea of coming in and saying, just go B2C, like just sell direct to farmers, because eventually you'll get critical mass and, eventually that'll take off, and you won't need all of those intermediaries in the middle. And just, there are really good reasons why, even though that's sound thinking, it's very, very difficult to apply in agriculture. It has been tried. And there are good reasons why it's not a direct translation in all instances.
Yeah, no, I think it really comes from, what is impressive. And I think that's probably going to lead to a lot of your success for your fund is you and your team's ability to understand what is going to be viable and for a fund life cycle within agriculture, and what's maybe a little bit too foreign, what's something that's probably not going to take any uplift based on how it works, and, what farmers actually need or what agriculture stakeholders actually want, So I think it's really interesting to watch your picks of portfolio companies and the startups that you do invest in, because I think it's a huge signal for, what's going to be coming forward as what is going to be some viable, exciting frontier products for agriculture. Uh, I'll take a step back. I want to ask some more general market questions.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that we noticed looking across the entire landscape of ag tech and even food tech as well, whether it's biotech, whether it's software solutions, IoT products, whatever, uh, everyone is focused on sustainability. I'm just curious, why now? Like, why is it becoming such a massive force in every single segment of agriculture and food tech?
Yeah, you used the word force there, and I think that that's that's a pretty good framing for the why now. Um, you know, the global food system is kind of at the nexus of three pretty significant forces. The first being that we have to continue to scale the system up to be able to produce affordable, nutritious food for a growing population, but in a way that doesn't it stops diminishing and starts improving the ecological environment, the natural environment that most of agriculture takes place in. And at the same time, agriculture as an industry needs to be a provider of decarbonisation solutions to other parts of the economy, because other parts of the economy won't be able to decarbonise quickly enough. So that second force is this need really to participate in the kind of global decarbonisation of the economy. And the third is all of that has to happen at the same time as needing to be resilient, improving the resilience and in fact the kind of adaptation of that system to, what we know that we're already locked into, a degree and a half, hopefully less, but possibly more, of change, and what that inevitably is going to mean in production systems, in, the need for different varieties and selections and practices. And so those three kind of things are arrows, if you like, pointing to the why now.
It makes sense. It definitely feels like there's a force. Like you said, it's a great way to frame it. The force across the board pushing for sustainability, and everyone's moving in that direction in a big way. I'm just curious. I mean, like I said before, I think your picks for investment are very interesting. What do you think are going to be some of the categories across agriculture or food technology that's going to be big or really interesting over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, so really kind of going back to those three forces, if you sort of think through what more is going to be needed, like in responding to, in managing those challenges, um, what more do we need? Where we really don't have kind of new and impactful solutions? I think one of the areas is in the intersection of kind of risk and finance. One of the reasons why agriculture is often difficult for people to enter is, there are, like, financially it's complicated, and for farmers, they don't have control of some of the major things that impact their financial viability, weather being the primary one, but labor availability, kind of global pricing to a large degree, those sorts of things. And so, when someone comes along and says, you need to do something differently, you need to change your practice, that sense of kind of adding up the pluses and minuses is often very difficult. And so, when we think about digitally native systems, the ability to sort of really model and understand how the physical world is now and what it might look like under these different scenarios, we see that creating great opportunities at the intersection of kind of risk and finance, and improving the degree to which there can be kind of financial flaws and caps and collars around asking farmers to do things differently, rewarding them when those things work, making sure that they're not negatively impacted by needing to be part of this thing that we all need to see done. So I think that's an area where we're really excited. I think some of the building blocks are there. We're getting much better at, measuring improvements in how natural capital is being enhanced. There are tools to help farmers, produce with lower input intensity, with lower emissions intensity. But I think they have to be matched with the kind of financial services, with the, insurance and risk management to sort of see that take place at scale, right? That's kind of movement from that early adopter through to mainstream production, because we have to move the whole system.
It'll be exciting to see how, a lot of the points that you just mentioned, how that's going to be reflected in your portfolio the next year or two.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the fun part, obviously, because there's no point talking about it unless we can find awesome founders who we can help. Like, they do the hard work, they do the heavy lifting. They've got to, get these systems through to scale. And so really, we're not doing our job unless we're helping them get that done.
Of course. Well, I know we got a little bit of time left. I have just a couple questions and then we'll close out. Last question I have to ask, and I'm just curious to get your feedback on this. We're 2 years into a pandemic, and I'm just curious how that's affected either your portfolio companies or, the agriculture, food tech industry in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first to recognize is just the human toll, right, of the pandemic, and of course, in the obvious sense of a lot of people becoming sick, a lot of people dying that didn't need to. But I think the second larger is just the impact it's had on everybody's lives in their ability to spend time with their loved ones and all those sorts of things. So, with that kind of recognition, we have seen a lot of interesting impacts and responses to all of that, the limitations of movement, the limitations of a fully kind of globalized and optimized supply chain. And I think, nowhere more poignantly than in the food system. So on the kind of tragedy of all of that personal toll, I think there will be some great changes that we'll see as a result of how we've had to adapt and respond to all that. I think it's shown us, what vulnerability in a supply chain looks like. It's shown us what kind of adaptability and why it does make sense to sort of invest in capacity and innovation as far as the food system is concerned. It's turned us into more of a global community. I mean, there are still founders in our portfolio companies that I've never physically been in the same room as. And I think that that's fabulous. I think that both for founders and investors, the idea that, we don't need to be in the same city, in the same room to work out that there's something there that if backed and if invested and if grown can have a global impact. So I think, there's also been some really positive benefits of that. And if some of the end result of all of the difficulty and trauma for people will be that, we're able to move faster, we're able to move with a more kind of global view, then I think that that's also, a really positive outcome.
No, I think that wraps up most of the questions that I wanted to ask you, Matthew, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. To kind of close out, I'm just curious if you wanted to highlight some of the unique aspects of your fund. I know you guys are Australian-based, heavy focus on Australian-based companies, but it seems like international companies you do invest in, especially have big interest in growing in Australia. I think, again, your team has really impressive background and network probably within of agtech stakeholders across Australia and the region as well. But I'm just curious if there's anything else that we want to highlight about Tenacious Ventures.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's largely Australian originated, but global in view, certainly. And actual fact, with 10 investments and all the reserves, we're kind of around about 60% allocated as a fund. And so the inevitable question we get asked then is, okay, what next? And, when is fund 2 coming along? I mean, we're obviously starting to think about that. Having said that, obviously the portfolio we're super excited about. We're now kind of in the phase of really hands-on support and board roles and that sort of thing, which again is, one of the most satisfying and challenging parts of the role. But, if we were to think about, okay, what next? I think we're super comfortable. We like the dedicated focus. We like the kind of barbell approach, we're finding that the content that we produce, helps us and other people think more systematically about bringing, change and kind of long-term sustainability to the global food system. So, we're just excited about, opportunities to sort of do that, maybe in a couple of extra geographies, maybe, um, coming in early and being able to, stay in that journey longer with founders from all over the globe.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Matthew. I really appreciate taking the time. And again, just to recap, we have through the series to highlight what we think are some of the best both founders and investors globally. And you get to hear today, Tenacious Ventures. We think you guys are really impressive. I mean, you have a fantastic portfolio, fantastic team, execution strategy. I'm sure your portfolio is benefiting immensely from your knowledge of the ecosystem and your relationships. And really excited to see how the fund evolves, even though it's a relatively newer fund. I think you guys are making huge waves in the ag tech ecosystem as a fund. And it's really impressive to see what you guys are doing. So again, Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome, Kai. Really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat.